Okay, gonna do one today on Blackcat's linear amplifiers. Even though Blackcat at one time made they didn't make radios, but they made just about every other accessory for CBs. They made wattmeters, frequency counters, scopes, antennas, co-phasers, dummy loads. They made a rare preamp, a Blackcat preamp. That's really hard to find. They made a one-peel amplifier. That's really rare. But for the most part, they're famous for their tube amplifiers. And I'm a bass man, but and I like their tube amps and modulators. They were nasty. A lot of TVI and harmonics. They are always fighting the FCC back in the day. The company was in Syracuse, Indiana. I've only been down there a couple times, met a couple of the guys, down there, hemming and grinning. I knew some about electronics, and it was fascinating to me, talking to the tech and builder and designers of these amps, way back in 70s and 80s when I went, down there. The info I could find, I looked through all my schematics and stuff. I probably got 50, 60 different schematics. A lot of it is, they made so many versions of this stuff that, like, a JB12, it might be 20 different versions, and I might have, 10, 15 different schematics of a JB12 and so on. But they earliest I found was, at least for a schematic of manual, was September 1970, and the latest I found was in 1995. So they were at least making schematics in literature from 1970 to 1995, and that's what I found. It could be more, but that's all I could come up with on it. And this here, I'm not 1,000% sure, but it looks like one to me. That's the early JB12 in that kind of cabinet there, before Blackcat changed the style to that there. And a JB12, which this is, come on off of here. It has, the early ones had two tubes. One was a keying circuit tube, which is the smaller tube. Most of them use the 6AQ5 just to key it up. Now, the modern ones, they use a transistorized keying circuit. But back then, transistors was just coming into play, and they used a tube just to key it up, key the relay, and the other one for output, a 6BQ5. That's a JB12. I've seen people on the net and on YouTube, like, that's one driving one. No, that keying circuit tube has nothing to do with the power or drive or anything like that. It only keys the relay. And this early version of the JB12 had a tune cap, a variable tune right there. Early versions had, the very early versions had that. Later they got rid of that, at least on the JB12s and the 150. It's got the normal variable in the back, and also the early versions didn't have the set to line meter either on it. I guess what they found was, people were tuning them up too high and going for max power and high dead key, and they were blowing them up. So soon after, they redesigned it, and they came out with the set to line thing. And that was trying to get people to limit their dead key, going into the things, because you can adjust that adjuster in the back. And, this is a JB12 also. Another one with a tube keying circuit. That's why it's two tubes. And again, the later ones, they got rid of the keying circuit tube and used a transistor keying circuit. But they went to the set to line, where you're supposed to set your dead key to that line or less. And that way you didn't overpower these things and blow them up. Another common problem is when people would run them too hard, and they will run, you know, a lot of power. I see people say, I got 100 watts out of my JB12. Yeah, for a minute. It won't take 5 minutes if you're running 100 watts out to blow this little transformer here. And you see all the time, even now, people like, hey, Tram Doctor, you got a transformer for a JB12 or a 150? No, I don't. You can't find these things. You can find transformers that'll work, but the problem is most of the ones that will work are larger in size and they won't fit. So, you know, you want to rework the cabinet, or, you know, have it sticking out, or make something ugly trying to get the transformer to fit. I haven't came up with anything, and nobody else I know of either has it. This one, normally they came with the Blackcat sticker on them. That's an original, and somebody, not me, but it doesn't look bad. They redid the vinyl and put a little eagle on there to kind of match the golden eagle. But Blackcat JB12 is made to do 50 watts peak, and a JB150 is made to do 100 watts peak. This is a copy from the factory. And then 1 to 5 watts drive. You know, people driving these with high powered radios, you kill them. You turn them up too high with that variable in the back, you kill them. And oh, that's the single tune control. I'm trying to read it through the camera. Let me see if I can read it live. Single tune control on rear of unit for set to line meter. You set it to the line, or you can go less. Receive boost instructions are to be ignored. Back during the FCC crackdown, Blackcat started marketing their smaller amps as receive boosters, aka preamps. And they would come from the factory set up as a preamp, you know, during that time. And they had instructions on how to not, you know, modify this preamp and change it into an illegal, you know, linear amplifier. It's like, don't do that. Instructions that came with it. I'll get to that in just a second. Last is what I highlighted is what they talking about is warranty. If, you know, you send it back and they found out you drove it too hard, and, you know, you burned up the input circuits, input resistor, and the input coil and all that, then they ain't gonna warrant it. And that's what most people did. They hit it too hard and they would blow these things up left and right, you know, trying to get 100 watts out of a 50 watt amplifier. Don't do that. So anyway, here's a printout or a copy of one of the manuals on the wiring of it used as a preamp on the relay. And then it shows you on this one the old style, meaning old style. This was how it was hooked up on the relay as an amplifier, and this is how it was hooked up on the relay and the pinout as a receive amplifier. So it's basically saying, hey, you know, you got the preamp, and don't hook it up like that, because that'll make it into an illegal linear amplifier if you do that. Okay. And it's talking about the bias too, you know, moving the bias around, because it's biased again to be a preamp. And if you want to make it into a illegal linear amplifier, you know, don't do that. But I'll get to that in a second too. Get back to it. This, I don't think I've done this one. This is a JB150. Uses that bigger tube there, which was a high-powered version of the 6L6, which is the audio tube they use in the Tram D201. But they use a high-powered version because they ran it really hard in these JB150s. So they used the 8417 or a 7581. Same pinout and all that as the 6L6. It's just it would take more power because they ran the voltages up to about 800, I believe, 850 on these, where like a tram runs the voltage like 350. So they hit the tube really hard. And a JB150 again is made to dead key about 20 and swing to 100 peak or less. You could dial it down with that set the line thing in the back, but don't dial it up. And then this one has the keying tube also. And this is a mobile version pretty much of the JB150. For the mobiles, they pretty much use this kind of cabinet here. And it's a one tuber. You can see that same type of tube in there. With any mobile tube amp, you're going to get that whining noise when you key it down. And that's basically these transistors here. They're called chopping transistors. And they chop up the DC. You know, they turn the DC on and off real quick at about 2 kilohertz, and that's that whine you hear, because 2 kilohertz is right there in that hearing range where you get that. That's a 2 kilohertz whine of those choppers chopping up DC and turn it into chopped up DC, and then they can feed that into the transformer. The transformers in a lot of DC or mobile amps like these are a lot smaller. And they can go smaller because it's going so much quicker with the AC going into it that it doesn't, it refreshes itself. So they can be smaller and run on less amps because it's running, you know, a lot quicker, refreshing itself than the 120 hertz, no, 60 hertz AC ones, right? So that's a JB75. The mobile one, which is basically the mobile version of the JB150. And moving right along, this is the JB76, aka JB200. Somebody told me recently that, hey, they probably changed the name from a JB200 to a JB76 because of the 76, you know, 200-year bicentennial. And I'm like, hey, that makes sense. I'll go with that. But the JB200 is a two-piece, and the top unit is just the power supply only. Come on off of there. Man, I used to be Superman, but now Tram Doctor's getting old. Gonna put the camera down so I can get the cover off, right? Still stuck on there pretty good. Let me get a screwdriver. There we go. So the JB76, aka JB200, this unit that's shaped like the JB12's 150, this box is just a power supply, and underneath it, it has just the power supply components, and that's the transformer in it. And by the way, you don't see the transformers on these blew up very much, because Blackcat, again, they got pretty wise. They like, you know, people over fusing it and, you know, putting in heavy duty fuses. What we will do is put a circuit breaker on this one. And, you know, therefore, when they overdrive it, you know, it'll blow out the circuit breaker or trip the circuit breaker before it blow out the transformer. So at least on the JB76s, aka 200s, there, get off of there. You won't find very many transformer blown because of that circuit breaker. Let's see if we can turn it around. And there it is on the back. You can see that circuit breaker a trip. You hit it too hard, drive it too hard, that circuit breaker will pop. And you can reset it, but you hit it too hard again, it's going to pop again. So unless they bypass that circuit breaker and put a big fuse in there, a bigger circuit breaker, which, you know, they'll kill it. At least that saved the transformers in these for the most part. Blackcat, you know, was trying to get smart. But anyway, this is the RF deck of a base JB76, aka JB200, with two tubes in it. And they were designed to do 200 watt peaks, and that's a 7581 high-powered version of the 6L6, and the RF deck and all in there. And this little tuner on the side is the load cap. It's actually in series with that other mica capacitor here. Those two are in series, and that makes the load cap. And then it's got a tune cap in it. It's hard to see on this one, but those are those two micas right there zoomed in on the camera. That's one, and there's another one partially hidden. So it's got a fixed tune. It's not variable, and then they got a variable load on this. They tried to make it dummy proof because the tune cap basically tunes the tubes. So Blackcat, you know, with these, they like, we know what we need exactly to tune the tubes correctly, so they made it fixed to try to make it mud duct proof, where, you know, somebody couldn't detune it or, you know, tune the tune wrong. And then all you can tune is the load on the side. And even that, you know, on the side there, it's like they put it so you can't mess with it too much. They did that on purpose. They could have put it on the front, but they're like, no, we don't want you detuning and retuning and doing all kind of crazy stuff with our amplifier. So they tried to make it foolproof. And then here's another manual, and this is a factory manual from Blackcat from back in the day, and they came with this sticker on them, and it said, you know, regulations prohibit the use of this amplifier from 24 to 35 megahertz, because that was the FCC rule. And it's telling you, do not remove the shorting wire, you know, across the coil and blah, blah, blah. Do not disconnect this capacitor. Do not connect the other capacitor. You know, part changes are at the substitutions are at the manufacturer's discretion. Don't this, don't that. Again, don't do this, because this will convert the whatever they were marking the JB76 at, maybe 6 meters or receive preamp, I don't know. But don't do that, because that'll make it into an illegal, you know, 24 to 35 megahertz illegal linear amplifier, which makes it illegal to sell or own and all that other stuff, or sell or buy back then. And here's another one on how to move the wires and stuff on the relay. Remember I was talking about that crisscross on another one that had the preamp on all the time, and they crisscross the wires because you're amplifying the input from the antenna going in instead of the output going out. So it's crisscross. So basically that's kind of showing it, and it's showing it here too. Like, yeah, that's the new preamp you got, but, and this is JB150 again, and then it's here's the old one. This is what the old one did, you know, to make it into a linear amplifier. So anyway, we're moving along. This is the mobile version of the Blackcat JB76, aka JB200. And on the mobile version, they just put an M on it. It was either JB76M for mobile or JB200M for mobile. And it was pretty much the same RF deck with the same two tubes, and it looks the same on the inside, but they used, again, a DC power supply, those chopping resistors I was talking about. And there's a small transformer in there. And one thing that people would find out the hard way is that this deck and that deck are not compatible. You know, you try to, well, let's not say the deck. You try to run a base power supply on the mobile deck, you got smoke and fire, and vice versa. You try to run the mobile power supply on the base deck, you got smoke and fire. They're not compatible. And by the way, speaking of that, there are so many different versions of the JB76, aka JB200. Even with the base version, if you got a mismatched power supply in RF deck, it may not work, or it may go up in smoke and fire, because the wirings and stuff was very different on some versions. You know, some versions the bias was in here, some versions the bias was in there, some versions the pinout was very different. So you can't automatically, you know, get one of these and find one of these somewhere else and think it's gonna work. And moving along, here goes another do's and don'ts. I think this one was from Secret CB, way back in the day, the Secret CB magazines. But, you know, 75A, you know, remove the jumper, move this resistor, load cap, you know. Oh, 75A, 81 version, 8417 version, JB76. They talking about them turns on the wiring again. And here's the JB1. That one peel I was talking about that's very rare. I guess they sold that as a preamp also during the FCC times. And it's saying again, you know, don't change this jumper here, don't change that jumper there, because that'll make it into a legal linear amplifier. You know, do's and don'ts. I wonder why, right? Don't do this, don't do that. And I'm getting there, almost done. Here's a flyer from a JB150A RB. RB stood for receive booster. So, and there it is again, receive booster under the jewel box. And by the way, JB stood for jewel box. You know, JB12, JB150, jewel box. So anyway, they were sold as receive boosters. And, you know, you would get it. It would be set up for a receive booster, or AKA preamp. And you would have to literally or physically go in there and change it around to convert it into a linear amplifier. And if you didn't know how to do it, you had to get somebody to do it, or else it wouldn't work. Actually, my first amp was a JB150. I was like, I don't know, 12. And I got it as a receive booster, and I didn't know how to convert that thing at 12 back then. And I was playing around with it on, key down on one hand, and that thing almost killed me. That's when I learned what Mr. Arc was. I knew not to touch, but I didn't know that electricity could jump back then, and that's what it did. That thing knocked me out for hours, burnt flush. Couldn't open one hand for hours. It was stuck closed. That was fun. And that's what really made me want to learn electronics, right? And last, JB200, infamous guy. They made a few versions of this. The JB1011 meant 1011 meters with the driver tube. Then the FCC came around. It's like, nope, nope, nope. So they made the 1080, 10 through 80 meters with no driver. And then they made a 6 meter with the driver. The reason for a while they could make the 1080 and market it and sell it without the driver, because it took 100 watts drive. And at one time the FCC made it illegal to sell an amplifier that would run on 4 watts drive. So the one with the driver tube was, you know, 4 watts drive. So Blackcat got rid of the driver tube on the 1080 and were able to sell it, you know, again because of the 100 watt drive requirements. But, you know, CBers got drivers and radios and everything else that could do 100 watts at that time, you know, coming out. So the FCC tightened the rules again, and they said it's illegal to run anything or sell any amp that'll run on 10 meters or 11 meters in that area. So that's when you see amps started like 15 through 80 meters, you know, even ham amps and CB amps. If you wanted to legally sell it, you had to say it was a 15 through 80 meter amp. You couldn't sell it on 10 meters. But that's the infamous king of the Blackcats, JB200. This one was a 1080, but it's been modified some by me. This is the one with the external power supply. It ran on 2 3500Zs. This one has been mono banded. And that's going to be about it for this video. That's my little, I guess, knowledge of Blackcat, little Blackcat history. Not claiming to be an expert, but that's about all I know on it. And maybe somebody know more, they can contribute and let me know. All right, that's it for this one. Oh, so I skipped one that I don't have. They made a JB440, Blackcat 440, which was basically a 4-tube JB76. Had 4 even bigger tubes, the 6550, which is even a heavier version of the 6L6 or 8417. That thing was a monster. You know, it would do about 400 or 500 watts peak, a swinging machine. I even seen a few versions of that. One had the driver tube and one did not. on the 440, but that's a rare monster. I've had 2 or 3 over my lifetime, but every time I get one, some big boy wants to get that for a driver for a multi-tube 500Z box, or maybe a 3000, and that's an amp that'll do that, you know, with a lot of swing. So I've sold them for a lot of money back in the day. I kind of regret it because I'd like to have one of everything, but hey, that's the way the ball bounces. All right, that's it for this one this time. Bye.